It was just a broken-down car and a quiet man with a wrench. But when he fixed her engine in the pouring rain, he had no idea he'd set a miracle in motion. The next day, a helicopter landed beside his trailer, and with it came a woman, a letter from the past, and a second chance at life-love, and something he thought he'd lost forever. This is not just a love story. It's about kindness that echoes across generations, and the rain that changed everything. If stories like this warm your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Soul Moment Story, and join us for more tales of hope, healing, and the quiet miracles of everyday life. Now, let's begin. The rain had been falling for hours, a slow, cold drizzle that turned the mountain road into a slick ribbon of mud and regret. Caleb Brooks squinted through the windshield of his aging pickup, the wipers squealing in protest with every pass. Beside him, his 6-year-old daughter, June, sat hugging her faded stuffed rabbit, her legs swinging above the floorboard. Cold, Caleb asked, adjusting the heater dial, even though he knew it didn't do much anymore. June shook her head. "I'm okay." Her voice was soft but steady. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small paper-wrapped bundle. "Want one of my oatmeal cookies? I saved them from school lunch." Caleb smiled, the kind that came slow and tired. "Thanks, sweetheart." Maybe later. They were halfway home when they saw it. A black SUV, hazard lights blinking weakly, steam curling from the hood like a signal of surrender. Caleb's foot eased off the gas. The road was narrow, the shoulder muddy. He pulled over. A woman was standing in the rain, her blazer soaked through blonde hair matted to her face. She was staring at the open hood like it had personally betrayed her. Caleb stepped out into the rain. June's small voice piped up behind him. "Do you know her?" "Nope. Are we helping her?" Caleb gave a small nod. "Looks like we are." He approached with slow, even steps, his worn boots sinking into the mud. "Car trouble." The woman turned, startled. Her eyes were tired, sharp, and something else vulnerable. "Yeah," she said. "It just stopped. I think it overheated. I've been calling roadside assistance for over an hour, but no signal." Caleb glanced at the woods hemming them in. Cell service was a luxury out here. "Mind if I take a look?" She stepped aside. "Be my guest." He leaned under the hood. Steam hissed at him like a warning. He checked the coolant hose, the cap, the belts. Routine, efficient. Rain soaked through his flannel shirt trickled down his back. He didn't flinch. "You're low on coolant." "Probably pushed too hard uphill," he said, without looking up. "I've got some in the truck." "You carry coolant with you." He smiled faintly. "I carry everything." She watched him jog back to his truck, grab a jug and funnel. June waved shyly from the passenger seat. Caleb returned, poured the fluid carefully. Within minutes, the engine stopped hissing. "That should get you to the next town," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. The woman looked at him like she wasn't sure what to say. "You didn't have to stop." "Didn't have to?" "No." A pause. "Then thank you." "Really?" Caleb gave a nod and turned to walk away. He didn't ask her name, didn't give his. But June, still holding her bundle of cookies, hopped down and ran up to the woman. "These are for you," she said, thrusting the package out with both hands. The woman looked down, stunned. "What are they?" "Oatmeal. I made them with my dad." "You look like you need something sweet." The woman crouched, the rain pooling in the creases of her suit. "What's your name, June?" The woman smiled, eyes glistening. "Thank you, June. I'm Savannah." She looked up, but Caleb was already in the truck. June ran back, and they drove off, wipers slicing the gray silence. Savannah stood there holding the cookies, watching the truck disappear into the trees. That night, Caleb tucked June into her small bed in the corner of their trailer. Rain still drummed gently on the roof. "Do you think she liked the cookies?" June whispered. I think she needed them more than we did. Caleb said. He turned off the lamp and lay back in his own bed on the other side of the room, separated only by a threadbare curtain. He stared at the ceiling for a long time, the image of the woman's soaked face lingering in his mind, not for her beauty, but for her sadness, like someone who had everything but had somehow lost something deeper. A world away, Savannah sat in her luxury hotel room in Seattle, holding a half-eaten oatmeal cookie in her hand and staring at the rain streaking down the tall window. She had no appetite, no meetings scheduled, no one waiting on her. But something about that man, the way he worked without words, the way he handed over help, without asking questions, stuck with her. That and the little girl's eyes. Soft, honest, untouched by the cynicism of the world Savannah had lived in far too long. She reached for her phone. Still no signal out there in the woods. She opened her laptop instead and began typing into a search bar. Caleb Brooks, Oregon volunteer firefighter, single dad. It was a long shot. But some things were worth chasing, even in the rain. The morning broke gray and gentle with mist, curling like breath across the mountain ridge. Caleb rose early, as he always did, before the sun had fully gathered its strength. The trailer creaked with familiarity as he padded across the narrow kitchen space, bare feet on cold linoleum. He started the percolator, the sound of bubbling coffee comforting in its predictability. Outside, the trees shimmered under the weight of the rain that had finally passed. Steam rose from the soaked ground as the earth exhaled. Behind the curtain, June stirred. "Daddy." "I'm here, Buck," he called softly. She pushed the curtain aside, blanket still draped over her shoulders, like a cape. "You think the lady made it home okay?" Caleb poured 2 cups, one full one with just a splash and a lot of milk. "I think she's just fine." June sipped hers, wrinkled her nose. Still bitter. "You'll get there," he smirked, taking a long draw from his own. But even as he moved through the motions, pulling on work boots, checking the toolbox, tightening the gasket on the leaky sink, Caleb's mind was elsewhere. The soaked blazer, the stunned expression, the way she'd crouched to talk to June like she hadn't done that in a long time, like she'd forgotten what kindness felt like when it came from a child. There'd been something about her, not just beautiful though she was. It was more than that. Lonely, out of place, like a song played on the wrong radio station. He shook the thought off. Daydreams didn't feed a child or fix a roof. As they stepped out into the cool light, June tugged at his hand. I liked her. She looked like a lady in a storybook. She did, Caleb admitted. Just wetter. June giggled. "Do you think she'll come back?" "I don't think people like her come back, sweetheart." Somewhere down the mountain, in a world of brushed steel and glass, Savannah Hale had not slept. Her suite in the Seattle Tower was silent but suffocating. The oatmeal cookies were now crumbs on a linen napkin. Her blazer, still damp, hung over a chair, and the heels she had kicked off the moment she entered the room were now tipped over on their sides, like things abandoned after a storm. She sat cross-legged on the bed, laptop balanced on her knees. She'd searched everything: Caleb Brooks, Oregon volunteer mechanic, single dad, mountain trailer child, named June. Nothing definitive. A few scattered mentions of a Caleb who had once been a firefighter before resigning abruptly. No photos, no address. She exhaled, frustrated. "Why do you care?" she murmured to herself. But she knew. Deep down, she knew, because it had been so long since someone helped her without wanting something in return. She closed the laptop and walked to the window. The rain had stopped. The sun had found a break in the clouds and spilled onto the horizon, setting the glass of the city towers ablaze with light. She had meetings today, contracts to sign, a quarterly call with shareholders. Instead, She picked up her phone and called her assistant. "Cancel my schedule for the next 2 days." There was a beat of silence. "Are you sure?" "Ms. Hale." "Yes," she said. Then, after a pause, "And call the charter company. I need a helicopter to that mountain town by noon." Back at the trailer, Caleb was crouched beneath the sink, cursing quietly, as a pipe stubbornly refused to stop dripping. "Can I play outside?" June asked already. Halfway to the door. "Boots on, don't go past the tree line." "Yes, sir." She ran out, rain boots splashing in the leftover puddles, her braid bouncing behind her. She found her favorite spot, a mossy log beneath a pine tree, and began building a castle from sticks and stones. The morning birds were out chirping their sleepy gossip. Then she heard it, a low rhythmic thrum. Not a car, not thunder. She looked up. Daddy. Inside, Caleb had heard it too. He rose slowly, wiping his hands on a towel. When he opened the trailer door, he saw it. A sleek white helicopter descending slowly toward the clearing behind the garage. He blinked, stunned. June raced back, eyes wide with wonder. "Is it a news chopper?" "I don't think so," Caleb said. The helicopter touched down, dust and pine needles swirled in its wake. Then the door opened. And there she was. Savannah stepped out slowly, wind pulling her hair free from its careful bun. She wore jeans and boots, now a long tan coat wrapped around her shoulders. Caleb stepped forward, instinctively shielding June Hope. "I'm not intruding," she called over the rotor's dying echo. He didn't move. "You came back." Savannah hesitated, then smiled. "I couldn't stop thinking about those cookies." June lit up. "I have more." Savannah crouched, her coat flaring slightly around her. "I was hoping you would." Caleb finally found his voice. "Why are you really here?" She looked up at him, serious now. "Because I've spent years surrounded by people who wouldn't lift a finger for me, unless they got a contract out of it. You helped me in the pouring rain without even asking my name." He didn't answer. Savannah stood and pulled something from her coat pocket. A folded letter. Aged, creased. "My mother passed 2 months ago," she said. And in her final letter to me, she wrote, "If you ever lose your way, find the man who stops in the rain. He'll show you what matters again." She paused. "I think I just did." The air hung heavy after the helicopter lifted off its low hum, replaced by a quiet, so full it nearly rang. Caleb stood still for a long moment, arms folded across his chest, watching the dust settle in the clearing behind the trailer. Savannah was inside, now sitting on the only decent chair in the cramped living space, while June enthusiastically prepared hot cocoa, like it was a royal banquet. He still wasn't sure if this was real. Caleb stepped inside, ducking slightly out of habit. Savannah looked up from the little Polaroid photos June had shown her, snapshots of birthday cupcakes, snow forts, a picnic under pine trees. "You sure you're not here by accident?" he asked, voice low but not cold. She smiled faintly. "Would it help if I said yes?" He raised an eyebrow. "No," she admitted, "but maybe it'd be easier." He nodded, sat down on the edge of the built-in bench across from her. The room was too small for awkward silences, so the silence filled fast. June broke it. "I put extra marshmallows in yours," she chirped, placing a chipped mug into Savannah's hands. "Daddy says, that's how you fix bad days." Savannah looked at the little girl with something like awe. "Then I must have had a really bad month," she said softly, taking a sip. "This might be the best cocoa I've ever had." June beamed, then skipped to her blanket fort in the corner. Caleb watched her settle in with her coloring book before turning back to Savannah. "Why'd you really come?" Savannah ran a finger along the rim of her mug. "What I told you before about my mother's letter, it's true, but it's more than that." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small leather-bound book. The spine was frayed, the corners worn. She handed it to him. Caleb flipped through the pages. The handwriting was looping elegant, each page filled with thoughts, observations, and memories. On one page, near the middle, his eyes stopped. There was a man once. I was 19. My car stalled during a storm, and a boy in a firefighter uniform jumped from his truck like a hero from a novel. He didn't even get my name, just smiled and said, "Get home safe, ma'am." I never forgot that. I hope my daughter meets someone like him someday. Caleb blinked. That wasn't me. No, Savannah said, but it might have been your father. He looked up sharply. She nodded. There aren't many Brooks families up this mountain. Not with that same quiet kindness. When I saw your daughter, I knew. This family doesn't forget how to give. Caleb stared at the journal again. He hadn't heard his father's name spoken with reverence in a long time. The old man had passed away when June was still in diapers, gone before Caleb could ask half the questions he'd carried since childhood. "So you're here," he said. "Slowly, 'cause you think some guy who helped your mom 30 years ago might have been my dad." "No," she replied. "I'm here because a man helped me yesterday, and I haven't stopped breathing easier since." Later that afternoon, after June had fallen asleep, mid-coloring, Savannah and Caleb stepped outside. The earth was still soft underfoot. Puddles shimmered with sky and pine needles. A breeze tugged gently at Savannah's coat. She took a deep breath. I inherited my mother's property. 45 acres of woods and a rundown farmhouse on the other side of the mountain. Caleb whistled. "That's a lot of land. I want to turn it into something," she said. "Something real safe for foster kids. Kids aging out of the system. Vets who don't know how to be civilians anymore. A place that says, 'Welcome,' without making anyone feel like they owe something." Caleb studied her. She didn't look like someone who grew up in hardship, but the way she said it, the quiet certainty told him this wasn't some vanity project. It mattered to her. "You'll need a lot of help," he said. Savannah looked at him, then straight and steady. "That's why I came. I want you and June to come live there. Help. Build it. Make it real." The wind picked up whistling between the pines. For a moment, Caleb didn't know what to say. "Why me?" he finally asked. "Because you already live like it matters." He was quiet again. Then slowly he said, "It's not that simple. June's schooling my work. This place might be run down, but it's ours. You can say no," Savannah said gently. "But I thought maybe you were waiting for something to say yes to." Her words hit him in the chest like a knock he hadn't expected, but couldn't ignore. He glanced back at the trailer. June was sleeping by the window, her cheek pressed to the glass. Rabbit clutched in her arms. "Can I think about it?" Savannah smiled. "You wouldn't be you if you didn't." That evening, after Savannah had left this time by truck, not helicopter, Caleb sat on the porch with a thermos of coffee gone cold. He looked out over the clearing, then up at the sky, now painted with the soft gold of dusk. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to wonder. What if the best part of his story hadn't already happened? Caleb didn't sleep that night. Not really. He drifted in and out, mind, tangled in what-ifs and could-bes, haunted by the echo of Savannah's offer and the quiet look in her eyes when she left. It wasn't a look of desperation. It was something rarer. Hope. The next morning he rose before June and stepped outside with his coffee. The mountain mist still clung to the treetops like a secret. He sat on the porch step, staring out at the woods, listening to the birds greet the day. He hadn't wanted change, hadn't invited it. But now, like the aftertaste of cold rain, it lingered. Behind him, the screen door creaked. Daddy June's voice was muffled with sleep. "Out here," he replied. She joined him, blanket over her shoulders, like a royal cape. Her cheeks were pink from sleep, eyes still blinking against the light. "Did you say yes to the nice lady?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. "She wants us to move," he said softly. "Help her fix up that farmhouse. Start something new." June thought about that, her small fingers picking at the fringe of her blanket. "Do I get my own room?" Caleb smiled, surprised. "Probably. Does it have trees like here?" He nodded. "More trees. A lake, too, I think." She leaned her head on his arm. "Then I think Mommy would say yes." The mention of her mother's name always came soft and sudden, like a wind change. Caleb closed his eyes. She liked helping people. June added, "Maybe we should too." But if the day started with clarity, it didn't hold. By noon, the doubts returned, gnawing at the edges of Caleb's resolve. At the hardware store, he was greeted by familiar nods and small-town gruffness. People who remembered when his father taught shop class, when Caleb still wore his fire department badge, when June was just a baby strapped to her mother's chest. This was home. Even if it hurt. Inside the owner, Barry rang up his items and asked, "Heard a chopper landed near your place yesterday." "Someone lost?" Caleb hesitated. "A visitor." Barry leaned on the counter, smirking. "A visitor with heels and a city coat. I heard small towns missed nothing." "She's thinking of opening a place for foster kids," Caleb said. "Wants help fixing up a property on the other side of the ridge." Barry raised an eyebrow. "And she picked you, I guess." The old man nodded slowly. "Well, maybe it's time someone remembered what your family's good at." Caleb met his eyes. "What's that?" "Turning busted things into something better." Back at the trailer, June was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by crayons. She looked up as he entered. "I made a drawing of the new house." He crouched beside her. The picture was full of color, greens and browns, and a big yellow sun. Stick figures stood by a lake, a tall man with a beard, a little girl with red boots, and a blonde woman holding a tray of cookies. "I gave her cookies," June said, as if this justified everything. Caleb laughed. "I see that." But as he looked at the drawing, something in his chest shifted. He remembered how broken he'd felt after losing Emily June's mother. Remembered how hard it had been to keep going, every day, just getting out of bed, making lunch, braiding hair. Every small act of love felt like dragging a broken limb across time. But now, here was this kid. This resilient, radiant little girl, already trusting in a future he hadn't dared imagine. Maybe she was stronger than he was. Maybe she was ready for a new chapter. And maybe, just maybe, so was he. That evening he called Savannah. She picked up after one ring. "It's Caleb," he said. "I hoped it would be. We'll come by tomorrow," he said. "Take a look." "That's all. Just a look. I'll have coffee ready," he hesitated. "We don't do things fast, Savannah." Her voice was warm. "I don't want fast. I want real." He nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "I'll bring my toolbox," he said. Later that night, after June had gone to sleep, Caleb sat at the kitchen table with a photo album in his lap. The pictures inside were faded. Sunlit fields, holiday dinners, a smiling woman with dark curls holding a newborn June. He stopped at a photo near the back, his father standing by an old truck, grease on his shirt, the same quiet look Caleb had seen in the mirror lately. He whispered into the stillness, "You think I'm doing the right thing?" The silence, as always, offered no reply, but Caleb imagined the answer anyway. "Turning busted things into something better," Barry had said. Maybe that started with himself. The road to Savannah's inherited farmhouse wound through a patchwork of evergreens and rust-colored maples, gravel crunching beneath Caleb's tires as the pickup climbed the last hill. The old Ford rattled like it always did, but it climbed steady strong, just like the man driving it. June pressed her face to the passenger window, eyes wide. "Look, Daddy, there's a tire swing." Caleb smiled in spite of himself. "We haven't even seen the house yet. I already like it," she declared. The truck rounded the bend, and there it was, an old Victorian-style farmhouse, weathered but full of grace, sitting in a wide clearing flanked by trees. Its porch sagged slightly, and paint peeled along the eaves, but the curtains in the front windows' bright yellow gingham waved cheerfully in the breeze. Savannah stood on the porch, her boots' dusty sleeves rolled up, and a carafe of coffee in hand. She raised it like a peace offering. "I brought the good stuff," she called as they parked. Caleb stepped out, stretching his back, toolbox in hand. June ran ahead, stopping just shy of the steps. Savannah crouched, arms open. "Hey there, Miss Marshmallow." June giggled. "That's not my name." "Well, it should be. You make legendary cocoa." June took her hand, just like that. The day felt familiar. The tour was slow, deliberate. Savannah let Caleb see everything without pushing. The house was old, but sound. Hardwood floors creaked in comforting tones. Light poured in through generous windows, and every room held traces of memory. Dusty books, an antique mirror, a trunk of letters in the attic. But it was the third bedroom upstairs that stopped. Caleb. The walls were a faded rose, pink, the wallpaper peeling in places. In the corner sat a child-sized iron bed with a quilt folded at the foot, hand-stitched and worn thin with love. June slipped her hand into her father's. Savannah spoke softly. "It was mine. When I was little, Caleb ran a hand along the frame. It's still solid. It's waited a long time for laughter again." They ate lunch on the porch, grilled cheese tomato soup, sweet tea. June chased butterflies in the tall grass, while Savannah sat across from Caleb, her boots kicked off one leg tucked beneath her. "This house has been in my family for 4 generations. She said, "I used to think it was a prison when I was a teenager. Couldn't wait to escape to the city. And now it feels like the only thing that makes sense." Caleb took a sip of tea. "You're really doing this? A place for kids? Vets people with nowhere to land?" "I'm not good with small dreams," she said. He studied her for a long moment. "You're gonna need more than a hammer and good intentions. I'm counting on it." Silence stretched between them. Not awkward, just full. The kind that settles when two people stop pretending they're not a little afraid. Then Savannah reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "A draft," she said, "for a basic agreement. Housing in exchange for your help restoring the place, and eventually running maintenance. Flexible hours. Full say in how things are built." Caleb didn't take the paper. "You rehearsed that, didn't you, or did you talk like a businesswoman? I used to be one." He leaned back in the chair. "I don't want June growing up in a place where people come and go like traffic. She's already lost too much." Savannah looked out toward the meadow, where June now twirled beneath the tire swing. "Then let's build something that doesn't leave," she said. The sun was lowering by the time they finished walking the property, 45 acres of possibility. An old barn with rusted hinges, a lake reflecting the first stars of evening. Wildflowers sprouting where fences had long since fallen. Back at the porch, June sat curled in a porch chair, a blanket over her lap, a cup of cocoa in her hand. Savannah handed Caleb another paper as the day faded. "What's this?" he asked. She looked down suddenly. Shy. "It's the blueprint, not for the house. For the future, I had an architect friend, draft plans, dorm-style cabins, a community kitchen, counseling rooms, trails, space for laughter and safety." Caleb opened it slowly, the pages rustling like leaves. There were notes in Savannah's handwriting beside each building. Treehouse for confidence, garden for healing, bench under the maple place for stories. He exhaled quietly, overwhelmed. No one's ever asked what I think about the future before, he said. Well, Savannah said softly, you're the first man who ever made it look like home just by standing still. That night, back in their trailer, June fell asleep. Fast. Caleb sat at the table again, blueprint unfolded beside his coffee. He traced the lines with a calloused finger, pausing on a tiny rectangle labeled Brooks Residence. He'd never planned to leave this trailer. It was small, but it had been safe. Familiar. But for the first time in years, he didn't feel like holding on so tightly. Out the window, moonlight touched the pine trees, and in the stillness, a quiet certainty began to settle, not just about nails and wood and plans, but about Savannah, and how something in her, in this whole crazy idea of hers, was breathing life into places he didn't know were still alive. It had been 3 weeks since Caleb and June moved into the farmhouse. The upstairs room, once Savannah's childhood haven, now echoed with June's laughter. Watercolor paintings taped to the walls, and stuffed animals arranged along the bed. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon. Most mornings, Savannah had learned to drink her coffee stronger. Caleb had learned to trust the silence between them. The repairs came slowly but with care. The porch had been leveled. The broken steps replaced. Savannah planted sunflowers by the front walk. Caleb fixed the leaky pipes in the kitchen and rewired the attic light. Every evening they sat on the porch while June played in the grass, and it felt more and more like something sacred was growing between the splinters and dust. But it wasn't until the day the old radio played that Savannah realized just how much she was changing too. It was a Thursday, hot for late spring. Caleb had pulled the ancient radio out of the storage closet in the barn. The thing was a relic, wooden frame, cracked dial dust, thick as bark on the speaker mesh. I used to listen to the Braves on one, just like this with my dad, he said, wiping it down. You think it still works? Savannah asked. He plugged it in. Nothing but static. Then slowly the sound cleared. A soft guitar chord, a grainy male voice singing an old country tune, I'll Be There For You, by Randy Travis. Savannah froze. Caleb looked up. You okay? She nodded slowly, but her hand trembled as she reached for the countertop. That was my mother's favorite song. She used to sing it while making Sunday pancakes. Caleb turned the volume down slightly. You don't have to listen. No, Savannah whispered. I want to. She closed her eyes. The melody carried her back to bare feet, on linoleum maple syrup, the scent of citrus shampoo in her mother's hair. Grief rose like a tide, but instead of drowning, it moved through her gently. For the first time, it didn't pull her under. It washed over her like a prayer. When she opened her eyes, Caleb was watching her, steady, quiet, present. She'd love what you're doing with this place, he said. Savannah smiled, wet-cheeked. She's the reason I'm doing it. That evening, after June went to bed, Savannah and Caleb lingered outside beneath the string lights they'd hung from the porch to the trees. A breeze stirred the wind chimes. The world felt hushed, like it was leaning in to listen. I never thought I'd stay in a place like this, Savannah said. Too many bugs, Caleb asked with a grin. She nudged his boot with hers. Too many roots. I used to move every time something got hard. What made you stop? She looked up at the stars. You did. Caleb shifted slightly. Startled, but not displeased. You and June, she continued. The way you don't hide from hard things. You make this place feel like it matters. Caleb looked at her, then really looked, the way the light touched her cheekbones, the way her eyes stayed soft, even when she was tired. He thought of the blueprint in his desk drawer, the one she hadn't asked him to finish, but waited on anyway. You make it matter too, he said. Their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. A few days later, Savannah received a call she hadn't expected. It was from her former assistant in Seattle, Melissa. "I know you asked not to be contacted," Melissa said. But something came up. Savannah tensed. "What is it?" "The board voted to freeze your severance package. They claim your absence violated the executive terms. Legal's working on it." "But..." Savannah exhaled. Hard. "They're going to take back what they promised, I'm afraid." "So, which means the funding for the center's launch might be gone." Savannah finished. Melissa paused. "Do you want to fight this?" Savannah stared out at the lake behind the barn where June was skipping stones. "Let me call you back." She hung up and sat very still. Everything. The cabins, the outreach programs, the therapy spaces. It all hinged on the seed funding from her corporate buyout. Without it, the blueprint became just paper. That night, she told Caleb. He didn't interrupt. Just listened. Arms crossed. Jaw tight. "So that's it?" he finally asked. "They strip it away and you just take it." I walked away. I signed papers. They found a loophole. His eyes flashed. "They're using your kindness against you." Savannah's voice was quieter now. "I'm not sorry I left, but I don't know how to build all this without that money." There was a long silence. Then Caleb said, "We do it slower." She looked at him. "We build one cabin at a time." He said, "Maybe not all the fancy stuff right away, but we start. Nail by nail, board by board. With what we've got." Savannah's eyes filled. "You'd stay, even without the guarantee. I'm not here for the money." He said, "I'm here for the work and for you." Her breath caught. The wind picked up. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. Caleb stepped closer. "Then don't. Just stay." Later, when the house was quiet, Savannah returned to the old radio. She turned the dial, hoping the signal still held. It crackled to life. This time, a different song played, a lesser-known ballad about beginnings that felt like endings, and endings that were just hiding new doors. She stood by the window, watching Caleb walk across the grass with June on his shoulders, her giggles bright in the twilight. And she realized even if she'd lost the funding, she'd found something far rarer, a home. The farmhouse creaked with the soft breath of early summer. It was Saturday morning, the air warm, but not yet heavy, and June had taken to collecting wildflowers with the fervor of a tiny botanist. Her laughter filtered through the open windows as she dashed across the meadow, a tin bucket clanging at her side. Inside, Savannah moved through the house with purpose, cleaning the shelves in the upstairs study, a room she hadn't spent time in since returning. The room held her mother's old writing desk, still sturdy, though time-worn, with a cracked leather blotter and brass lamp caked in dust. She opened drawers slowly, half expecting moths or forgotten bills. Instead, she found something far more personal. A bundle of letters tied together with fraying blue ribbon. Savannah sat down, fingers trembling as she undid the knot. The top envelope was addressed in her mother's handwriting, but not to her. It was addressed to someone named Thomas Brooks. Her breath hitched Brooks. Her pulse quickened as she read. "Dear Thomas, I never sent this, though. I must have written it 100 times. But now, I'm old, and memory plays tricks. I want you to know, I never forgot you. It was a rainy afternoon. You stopped to help when no one else would. You didn't flirt, didn't pry, just kindness, pure and full. I was 19 and scared. You made me feel safe. I don't know if we would have made it, or even if we should have. But sometimes I wonder, what if I had gotten your name that day? Would life have looked different if this letter ever finds? You know that you were a turning point. And when I told my daughter about the kind of man she should wait for, I was remembering you with quiet gratitude. Margaret Hale. Savannah stared at the letter for a long time, her eyes burning. Thomas Brooks. Could it really be Caleb's father? She thought of that quiet strength, the humble way Caleb helped her without agenda, without ego. The steadiness in his voice, the way he showed up every day. Not just for her, but for June, for the house, for the vision they were building. What if kindness had truly been passed down? She carefully folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket. That evening, as Caleb stacked lumber near the barn, Savannah approached with 2 lemonades and a hesitant expression. "You got a minute?" she asked. "Always." They sat on the porch steps, the horizon melting into soft gold, and rose. Caleb took a sip of his drink, sensing something different in her stillness. "I found a letter today," she said. He waited. "It was written by my mom, to a man named Thomas Brooks." He stilled. "She never sent it, but she wrote about a rainy afternoon. A young firefighter who helped her when she was lost, didn't ask for anything, just showed her what safety felt like." Caleb looked down at his boots. "That sounds like my old man." She never forgot him. Caleb exhaled a long breath, like something unraveling he didn't talk about a lot from back then. But he used to say the only kind of love worth remembering is the kind that leaves you better than it found you. Savannah smiled faintly. Then she remembered him exactly right. They sat in silence for a while, fireflies blinking like Morse code across the yard. "It makes sense now," she murmured. "Why I felt something the second you helped me on that road." Caleb looked over at her. "You think some people are just meant to circle back around?" She met his gaze. "I think some kindnesses don't end. They just wait." The next morning, June bounded down the stairs with a bundle of flowers wrapped in newspaper. For the table, she declared. Savannah took them heart full and reached for a vase. As she arranged them, Caleb walked into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You're up early," she said. "Had a dream," he replied, stretching. "Good one," he shrugged. "My dad was in it. He was building something. Said he hoped I'd finish it." Savannah paused. "Maybe you are." He smiled. "Maybe we both are." Later that week, Savannah gathered the courage to send a letter of her own, this time to the local county office, submitting a proposal to rezone the land for non-profit community use. It was a small step, but a necessary one. She included sketches of the cabins, details of the youth mentorship plans, and a handwritten note that read, "This land was meant to heal." It just took me a while to remember how. Savannah Hale. As she walked it to the mailbox, June skipped beside her, chattering about frogs and fairies. Caleb watched from the porch, arms folded, pride etched into the soft corners of his face. The blueprint was no longer paper. It was becoming real. And every nail they drove, every meal they shared, every quiet moment they allowed themselves to feel, it was building something even stronger than shelter. It was building a future. The first real summer storm arrived just before dusk. Sudden, insistent drumming against the farmhouse roof, like 1,000 hurried footsteps. Savannah stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the trees sway like dancers under invisible hands. Thunder rolled deep in the distance, not angry, but ancient. Caleb was still out in the barn. She could see the warm glow of his work light through the sheets of rain. June had already fallen asleep on the couch tucked beneath a crocheted blanket. One hand curled around her stuffed rabbit, the other holding a half-finished crayon sketch. Savannah should have felt content. Safe. The farmhouse was full. The repairs were nearly done. The first permit for rezoning had been approved, but unease curled low in her chest, persistent and vague. She lit a candle and walked out onto the covered porch, pulling her sweater tight around her. The rain misted sideways, soft but steady. She stood there for a moment, breathing in the storm, the scent of wet pine and old wood and the ghost of summer firewood. Then the barn door creaked. Caleb stepped out, rain dripping from his jacket, a lantern swinging from his hand. "You planning to catch pneumonia?" he called. "I was just about to ask you the same," she replied. He walked up to the porch, steps, paused there, and studied her. "You okay?" he asked. She hesitated. "Can I tell you something and you promise not to fix it?" He gave a half smile. "I'll do my best." She sat on the porch swing and motioned for him to join her. He sat down beside her, the space between them familiar now, but still charged with something unspoken. "I'm scared," she said simply. He didn't say anything, just waited. "I've poured everything into this place," she continued, voice quiet against the rain. "Every dollar, every waking hour. And still, I wake up wondering if it'll all fall apart, like I'm pretending to be someone brave." Caleb leaned forward, elbows on knees, fingers laced. "I used to think being strong meant never feeling that way," he said. "But now I think maybe real strength is showing up anyway, even when you're scared." She looked at him. "Do you feel that way?" "Still, every morning," he said, without flinching. "I wonder if I'm enough for June, if I'm doing right by her, if I'll ever stop missing Emily." His voice didn't break, but Savannah heard the weight in it. "I don't try to outrun it anymore," he added. "I just carry it, like a backpack that's lighter some days, heavier. Others, the rain softened to a whisper." Savannah turned toward him. "Thank you for what?" "For letting me see the parts you don't say out loud." Caleb looked at her eyes steady. "I think you already saw them. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was deep shared. And it held something new, now an understanding so quiet it could only be felt." That night, sometime past midnight, Savannah woke to the sound of coughing. She found June in the hallway, curled up outside Caleb's room, her forehead damp with sweat. "Hey, sweetheart," Savannah whispered, kneeling beside her. "What's going on?" June looked up bleary-eyed. "My throat hurts." Savannah scooped her into her arms and carried her to the couch. Caleb appeared moments later, already dressed, concern etched across his face. Together they worked like clockwork. Cold compress, warm tea checking her temperature. Savannah whispered lullabies, while Caleb rubbed her back. Eventually, June drifted off. Savannah sat on the floor, her back against the couch, watching the little girl sleep. Caleb sank down beside her. "She'll be okay," he said softly. Savannah nodded. "It's just, I didn't realize how much I love her until I was scared of losing her." Caleb looked at her eyes, searching. "I'm not just here for the project," she said. "I need you to know that." He didn't speak, just reached over and took her hand, their fingers lacing naturally like it had always been meant to happen this way. The next morning, June's fever broke. She sat up, groggy but smiling, demanding oatmeal and cartoons. Caleb cooked while Savannah braided June's hair. The farmhouse felt warmer somehow, like the storm had swept something clean. Later that afternoon, while June napped, Savannah stepped out back to the bench beneath the maple tree, the one she had marked on the blueprint, place for stories. Caleb found her there. "I've been thinking," she said as he sat beside her. "Dangerous habit," he said, with a half smile. She nudged his shoulder. "We've come this far. Maybe it's time we stop tiptoeing around the rest." He turned toward her. "What rest?" Savannah took a breath. "The part where this," she motioned between them, "isn't just two people building a house." Caleb didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn piece of folded paper. He handed it to her. She opened it. It was a sketch, simple, done in pencil. 3 stick figures, a man, a woman and a child. Above them, written in a child's uneven scrawl, were the words, "Home is who you hold." Savannah's throat tightened. June drew it, Caleb said. After that night, said she had a dream. We were all sitting on this bench. Savannah folded the paper gently. She's smarter than us. Caleb smiled. She always was. They sat in silence a while longer, and when he finally reached for her hand again, she didn't let go. The first group of volunteers arrived on a Wednesday morning. 3 college students, a retired carpenter named Walt, and a school counselor named Doreen, all of them drawn in by a flyer, a conversation, or in Walt's case, the simple promise of good work with good people. They came with tool belts, camping gear, casseroles, and calloused hands ready to rebuild something that mattered. Caleb watched them unpack with quiet gratitude, his usual guarded stance softened by the sound of strangers laughing over lumber and lemonade. Savannah moved through the group effortlessly, guiding, instructing, encouraging, like someone who'd always belonged in the center of something good. June, of course, had become the official tour guide. "This is the porch Daddy fixed. That's where I saw a raccoon once. Over there's the garden where we found a frog, the size of a sandwich." They listened like she was the mayor. By late afternoon, the crew had raised half the frame of the first cabin. Savannah stood beneath the skeleton of wood beams, dust in her hair clipboard. In hand, when her phone buzzed, she stepped away, checked the caller ID. Unknown number, curiosity. 1, "Hello, Ms. Hale." The voice was clipped, corporate. "This is Vanessa Clark, from Wexler and Stein Legal." Savannah stiffened. "Yes, we're calling to inform you that your appeal regarding the severance dispute has been denied. As of today, your executive benefits have been formally revoked. All assets tied to the Hale estate's contribution toward charitable development are frozen." Savannah's voice caught. "I submitted the new plans. I made the revisions your office requested. We appreciate your effort, Ms. Hale. But the board has voted. The decision is final." The call ended. She stood very still. The laughter, the hammers, the music from the old radio. It all faded into a kind of quiet thunder inside her chest. Everything she had poured into this land, the foundation of her mother's legacy, the faith of every volunteer, the future she and Caleb had been building, beam by beam, it now rested on nothing. No fallback, no savings, just hope. And suddenly, it didn't feel like enough. That night, after dinner, she sat alone on the edge of the porch, watching fireflies blink across the field. Caleb joined her a few minutes later, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. Same as always, she didn't touch hers. I lost everything, she said, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. They froze it all. The money, the trust, every last promise. Caleb didn't flinch, and she turned toward him, startled. "What do you mean? And I mean, are you leaving?" Savannah blinked. "No, of course not. But I thought. You thought I was here because you had a checkbook." She was quiet. Caleb leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Savannah, I was here when the paint was peeling and the roof leaked. I'm here now that there's a garden and a swing set, and a girl who calls you her second favorite bedtime storyteller." A faint smile cracked across her face. Second. Hard to compete with a man who can do all the voices. She exhaled. "I'm scared, Caleb. I don't want to fail in front of all these people." "You're not failing," he said. "You're doing something brave, and brave things don't always come with guarantees." They sat in silence a while longer, letting the weight settle between them. Then quietly, Savannah said, "Maybe we slow down. Pause the builds. Tell the volunteers to come back later." Caleb shook his head. "Or maybe we let them keep swinging hammers. Let them feel like they're part of something worth not quitting. She looked at him. You always talk like that. He shrugged. Only when I'm trying to keep someone from quitting on herself. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The next morning, Savannah stood before the volunteers' clipboard, in hand, the same rain boots caked in yesterday's mud. I have to be honest with you, she began. The funding we expected isn't coming. What we build from here on out, it'll be slower. Smaller, uncertain. Murmurs passed through the group, but she continued. This place was never about money. It was about doing something good. Something lasting. If you need to leave, I understand. No hard feelings. She waited. No one moved. Walt, the retired carpenter, stepped forward. I came here to build something I can tell my grandkids about, not for a paycheck. Doreen nodded, and I didn't drive 3 hours to walk away when it got hard. One by one, the others echoed the sentiment. By noon, the sound of hammers rang louder than ever. That evening, Savannah found June in the field, collecting more wildflowers. These are for you, June said proudly, because you looked sad yesterday. Savannah knelt, accepting the bouquet with shaking hands. Thank you, honey. You're not going to leave, are you? No, Savannah whispered. I'm not. June tilted her head. Daddy said, sometimes people don't need saving. They just need someone to stand still with them for a while. Savannah closed her eyes. I think he's right, she said. That night, Savannah sat on the edge of her bed and wrote a letter to her mother. Dear Mom, I lost the money, the lawyers, the backup plans. But I haven't lost the dream. I think you'd be proud of the people here. I know you'd love June. She gives flowers like their currency. And Caleb, well, you were right about the kind of man I should wait for. Turns out some kindness echoes across generations, and I'm still listening. Love, Savannah. By mid-July, the first cabin stood proudly at the edge of the clearing, its walls painted soft sage green, the front steps adorned with a pot of marigolds June had planted herself. It was simple, just 2 rooms and a wood stove. But to everyone who saw it, it looked like a promise. Kept Savannah stood with Caleb in front of the finished structure as the final nail was driven in. Walt raised his hammer one last time and said, She's got good bones, just like her builders. The volunteers cheered. A group photo was taken June, insisting on standing in front, hands on her hips, like a foreman. That evening, the farmhouse buzzed with celebration. Doreen brought a peach cobbler. Walt played the banjo. A college kid named Riley juggled lemons until one hit him in the face, and everyone laughed. The porch lights twinkled, and fireflies drifted between laughter like punctuation. Savannah moved through the crowd with a pitcher of sweet tea, her heart full, but heavy. This moment, this joy had come not from success, but from surrender. Not from having everything figured out, but from showing up anyway. Across the porch, she spotted Caleb watching her. When their eyes met, she didn't look away. Later, after the guests had trickled out and the stars had taken over the sky, Caleb found Savannah sitting alone on the bench beneath the maple tree. Didn't think you'd run out of things to do, he said, easing down beside her. I'm just trying to take it all in, he nodded. It's a good night for it. They sat quietly for a moment. Then Savannah said, I used to think success was measured in square footage and stock options. And now I think it's measured in meals shared, in how many people feel safe enough to fall asleep. Caleb glanced at her, the light from the kitchen window catching the curve of her cheek. You've done that here, given people a place to rest. Savannah shook her head. We've done it. He didn't answer right away, just reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it, a compass. "It was my father's," Caleb said. "Carried it every day in the field. It stopped pointing north years ago, but he used to say, 'The direction's less important than having the guts to walk.'" Savannah closed her hand around it. "Why give this to me?" she asked, voice quiet. "Because Caleb said, turning toward her, 'You reminded me I could still walk toward something good.'" The next day, the first 3 residents arrived. A teenager named Lila, recently aged out of foster care. A young veteran, Marcus, still haunted by silent dreams. And Martha, a 62-year-old woman displaced from her home by a rent hike and a lifetime of going unnoticed. They stepped hesitantly from the transport van, blinking into the afternoon sun. June was the first to greet them, offering cookies in a basket like a tiny ambassador. Savannah introduced herself, soft but sure. "Welcome home." Caleb stood nearby, ready to help carry bags, fix what broke, or simply stand by if anyone needed steadying. By sunset, laughter floated from the new cabin windows. That night over dinner, Savannah looked around the table. June with crumbs on her chin. Marcus helping Lila open a stubborn jam jar. Martha humming as she stirred her tea. It wasn't a perfect picture. It was better. It was real. Later, as the house settled into the hush of night, Savannah sat beside June's bed. "Do you like our new friends?" she whispered. June nodded already, drifting. "Martha smells like cinnamon. I hope she stays forever." "I hope so too, baby." June blinked up at her. "You think Mommy would like this place?" Savannah's heart tightened. "I think she'd love it." And in that moment, it wasn't just a hope. It was a knowing. Out on the porch, Caleb waited, hands tucked in his jacket pockets. Looking out at the moonlit trees, Savannah joined him. They didn't speak for a long while. Then he said, "You ever think maybe all the broken roads are still leading somewhere?" She looked at him all the time. He turned to face her, stepped closer. "I want this to be more than a home we're building," he said. "I want it to be a life one where we don't have to say goodbye at the end of the night." Savannah swallowed, her throat suddenly thick. "I want that too." And there, under the soft rustle of trees and stars and dreams, finally finding ground. They kissed, not with urgency, but with the quiet certainty of 2 people who had already been choosing each other every single day. It wasn't fireworks, it was a door opening. And neither of them needed to ask what came next. They already knew. It began to rain again 1 year to the day. Not a storm, not a downpour, just a soft, steady curtain of water that washed over the fields like a benediction. The farmhouse stood strong now, porch rebuilt. Cabins occupied a barn full of tools and laughter. The garden burst with green. The air smelled of earth and hope. Savannah watched the rain from the porch swing. June curled against her side, both wrapped in the quilt Martha had made last fall. Caleb was finishing repairs on the 3rd cabin, his sleeves rolled up, soaked to the elbows. "I remember this rain," Savannah said softly. June looked up. "Is this when you met Daddy?" Savannah smiled. "It is. He fixed your car." "That's right. And then he fixed your heart." Savannah blinked. "Where did you hear that I made it up just now?" Savannah kissed her temple. "You're something else." June nodded. Matter of fact. "I'm half you and half him." "Of course I am." Inside the kitchen buzzed with the sounds of lunch prep. Lila was dicing tomatoes. Marcus strummed chords on a beat-up guitar someone had donated last month. Doreen and Walt had stopped by to help paint the new tool shed. Savannah walked through, slowly touching each detail of this life they'd built, with bare hands and big faith. The paint-chipped mugs, the old radio still playing country tunes, the list of garden chores pinned to the fridge, the shelf lined with tiny wooden birdhouses, each painted by a different resident. No one asked where the money came from anymore. No one cared. What mattered was that they had shown up for one another. What mattered was that it worked. That afternoon, Savannah found Caleb on the bench beneath the maple tree towel around his neck, a sandwich in hand. "You're soaked," she said. He looked up. "Rain never killed me yet." She sat beside him. "I got a letter this morning. Good news, I think." "So," she said, pulling the envelope from her pocket. It was from the state's Office of Community Affairs, a grant proposal she'd submitted months ago, forgotten in the bustle of everything else. She opened it slowly, then read aloud, "Dear Ms. Hale, we are pleased to inform you that your community rehabilitation project has been selected to receive a seed grant in the amount of $75,000. We commend your vision and commitment to restoring dignity and stability to underserved populations. We believe in what you've built." Caleb leaned back, eyes on the sky. "So we're official now." "We've always been official," Savannah said. "But now we can build a kitchen that doesn't leak." He reached over and squeezed her hand. "I'd marry you in that leaky kitchen," he said. She froze, then turned toward him. "Did you just propose?" He grinned. "Maybe I figured I should do it before someone else beats me to it." Savannah laughed, heart leaping. "You want to do this? For real?" "I've been doing it for real," he said. "Every day since you handed me those cookies in the rain." She kissed him sweet and slow. "Yes," she whispered against his cheek. 1,000 times. Yes. A month later, they held the wedding in the garden. Nothing fancy. No tuxedos, no cathedral. Just chairs beneath the maples. Wildflowers in mason jars. June, in a yellow dress carrying a basket of rings and poems. She wrote herself. Walt officiated reading from a handwritten speech that made Savannah laugh and cry in equal measure. Marcus played the guitar. Martha baked 5 pies. Lila read a passage about second chances. Caleb wore a blue shirt and his father's compass in his pocket. Savannah wore her mother's bracelet and no shoes. And when they said, "I do," it didn't feel like the start of something. It felt like the moment everything they'd already built finally had a name. That night, Savannah sat at the edge of the porch again, watching the moon rise over the lake. June had fallen asleep in Caleb's lap, arms wrapped around his waist like a vine. Savannah pulled out a fresh sheet of paper pen poised. She addressed it simply. "Dear June, you won't remember the day I met your father. Not really, but I will. It was raining, I was lost, and a man with tired eyes and steady hands changed the direction of my life with nothing but kindness. You've grown up here, now, on this land. We built, with people we love. You've seen what happens when we lead with trust, when we give without needing a reason. I hope you carry that with you forever, because the rain that day didn't just fix a car. It softened 2 hard lives. It made a home. Love, Mom." She folded the letter and placed it in a keepsake box beside the compass, a photo of the old trailer, and a dried daisy. June once gave her with the words, "This one's for your heart." And as the stars blinked into place above the trees, Savannah leaned into the night, knowing some storms don't destroy, they deliver. We'd love to know where in the world are you watching from today. Feel free to share your city or country in the comments. We read every single one, and your presence truly means the world to us. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe to Soul Moments Story so you won't miss the next chapter of love, hope, and the quiet miracles that still happen every day. Thank you for spending your time with us, and until next time, may kindness always find its way to your door.